Nurgle, also known as the Plague Lord, Grandfather Nurgle, or the Plague God, among many other honorifics, is the chaos god of disease, decay, despair, destruction, death and rebirth. In particular, the emotion of despair in mortals empowers the Plague God more than any other. Nurgle is known also as the Lord of Pestilence, the Fly Lord, Plague Father and the Lord of Decay. It is the third of the Chaos Gods to fully awaken within the warp, emerging during the second millennium in the midst of Old Earth's European Middle Ages, as great plagues swept across the world heralding the god's birth. Nurgle is the Chaos God most directly involved with the plight of mortals, particularly humans who suffer so acutely from a fear of death, perhaps the oldest fear of that species, or any other. While Nurgle is the god of death and decay, it is also the god of rebirth. Decay is simply one part of the cycle of life, without which no new life could grow. In the same way, Nurgle is also the god of perseverance and survival. While those who wish to spread decay and corruption are certainly amongst its followers, there are also those who wish to endure, to become resilient enough to handle the difficulties and opportunities presented by an uncaring universe. Many of those affected by Nurgle's poxes usually turn to the god in order to escape the pain and sheer despair caused by sickness and disease. Nurgle is the great lord of decay and the master of plague and pestilence. All things, no matter how solid and permanent they seem, are liable to eventual corruption and death. Even the process of creation is but the precursor to destruction and decay. The bastion of today is tomorrow's ruin, the maiden of the morning is the crone of the night, and the hope of a moment is but the foundation of regret. Though Nurgle is the ultimate creator of every infection and epidemic to have ever swept the universe, Nurgle is not a morose purveyor of despair and gloom, but in fact a vibrant god of life and laughter. In death, there is life. Upon the decay of the living untold numbers of bacteria, viruses, insects and other carrion feeders thrive. All life feeds upon other life to exist, and from every plague grows new generations, stronger and more virile than those who came before. Regeneration comes from decay, just as hope springs from despair. The greatest inspiration comes in the darkest moments. In times of crisis, mortals are truly tested and driven to excel. To understand what might otherwise seem contradictory or even perverse in nature, one must first comprehend that which Nurgle embodies. On the one hand, he is the Lord of Decay, whose body is racked with disease. On the other, the god is full of unexpected energy and a desire to organize and enlighten. The citizens of the Imperium know full well that their lives will end one day and that many of their number will live with disease or other torments in the meantime, yet they drive this knowledge deep into the corners of their minds and bury it with dreams and ceaseless activity. Nurgle is the embodiment of that knowledge of mortality and the unconscious response of all sentient beings to the knowledge of their own ending. It is the hidden fear of disease and decay, the gnawing truth of mortality and the power of defiance that it generates. Every single human being in the galaxy has been touched by Nurgle's fetid hand at some point. Countless trillions are host to its malignant, invisible creations, which corrupt their physical forms and sow despair in their minds. Interplanetary traffic ensures that contagious diseases are carried from world to world by the ignorant, the willful and the strong. As Nurgle's gifts multiply in full-blown pandemics, his power reaches a peak. Whole star systems, even whole sectors, are quarantined as plague runs rife across the stars. Proud civilizations wither away even as Grandfather Nurgle conjures obscene new life from their remains. Wherever there are plague pits and mass graves, the rotting splendor of Nurgle shines through. Despite his consistent generosity, only an enlightened few truly embrace Nurgle's greatness among humans and aliens. Yet the god's worshippers exist in numbers enough to ensure his demon servants access to the material dimension wherever plague abounds. This is just as well, for of all the chaos gods, it is Nurgle who most appreciates the personal touch. Nurgle's sacred number is 7, his colors are those of rot and ruin, waste and vomit, mucus and pus. The plague god is represented by the colors of green and brown, generally the most putrid variations of each. Nurgle also embodies the will of mankind and other intelligent species to struggle on no matter what opposes it, albeit perversely. Suffering, death, pain, human beings push these things from their minds and try to forget them by living in the moment in the hope that the future will be a better one. For this reason, Nurgle, his demonic plague legions and mortal followers usually demonstrate a disturbing joy at the pestilence that their god inflicts, seeing the plagues as gifts and the cries of their victims as gratitude for the strength to overcome the obstacles of a mortal life rather than agony. The Plague Lord is often referred to as Grandfather Nurgle, Father Nurgle, or Papa Nurgle by his followers because of this hideous paternal stance. It has recently been uncovered by the Aldari Harlequins that Nurgle is in possession of the Aldari goddess Aisha, whom he rescued from Slansh's clutches and imprisoned her within his realm in the warp. Nurgle utilizes her for his experiments, creating new contagions and diseases to spread into the material universe. With her divine powers of healing, Aisha quickly regenerates from these tests, although Nurgle gleans what information is desired from the temporary effects. It is said that, secretly, she whispers the cures to those diseases to the mortals of the universe. When it comes to understanding the glory that is the physical form of the Plague Father, those who are privileged enough to be able to read about the god in the pages of secret texts hidden away in the Black Library are on equal footing with the primitive warriors gathered around sooty bonfires within the wandering kill cruiser battleships of marauding orcs. Nurgle, like the other major chaos gods, does not have one single form that can be recorded, shared, analyzed, or conceived. His is majesty unfathomable by the mortal mind. Additionally, Nurgle is often referred to as a he, with the masculine gender, though in fact, like all the entities composed of psychic energy called chaos gods, it in fact has no gender. Still, if one were to delve into the comparative histories and galaxy-wide myths associated with Nurgle, certain commonalities would present themselves. Whereas other gods within the realm of chaos are associated with dozens, even hundreds, of depictions, there are far fewer variations on the appearance of the Plague Father. The legends and tales universally describe Nurgle in unflattering terms. He is said to be an immense, bloated humanoid, his body swollen with putrefaction. His skin is shown as leathery and necrotic, his surface pocked with running sores, swelling bubbos and oozing wounds. Internal organs bulging with decay spill through splits in the ruptured skin to hang like bunches of scrofulous grapes around his vast girth. He is a vast mound of rotting flesh, with open sores and gaping wounds in which his lesser demonic minions like Nurglings cavort and frolic, bursting forth from his pustules and suckling upon the dripping foulness. Weeping pustules ooze filth and his bowels constantly issue forth putrescent waste. His sickening, pus-covered form is accompanied by an enveloping cloud of buzzing flies. Beneath his fingernails, maggots and other carrion feeders lay eggs around which develop cysts that periodically burst open and spew their rancid payloads. Perhaps the tales are correct. Perhaps they are not. It does not matter, though, because whatever it is dwells within the mansion at the center of the Garden of Nurgle. There can be no denying that the creations of this being are both foul and wondrous, and the joy with which he goes about his work is infectious. Even if none of the insanity-inspired stories of Nurgle can be counted on to be perfectly accurate, the similarities among him are too hard to dismiss, and those similarities extend beyond the gut-churning descriptions of his open sores, exposed intestines, and stupefying stench. Rot and decay are part of Nurgle's nature, but so it seems are jocularity and enthusiasm. Such is the paradox of Nurgle. Indeed, it may be his boundless energy, the passion with which he delights in his work, and his irrepressible joviality that erodes the minds of so many who contemplate his existence. It seems impossible to believe that a rotund, fetid purveyor of plague and ruin could simultaneously positively beam with mirth and have such concern for the billions of souls upon whom he has inflicted his racking and hideous poxes. To bend the mind toward the task of reconciling such foulness with such frivolity is to invite madness. Those who are able to do so without slipping into lunacy are fortunate. They will have taken an important step toward understanding the great corruption that is to come. Unlike their less enlightened brethren, they alone will recognize that the Plague Lord is a tireless gardener of rot, who is always trying to prepare the slowly eroding realm they call reality for its grotesque apotheosis. Despite his horrific appearance, Nurgle is a warm, welcoming god who prides himself on the achievements of his followers, gifting them with his most hideous diseases even as he protects them from all pain and the cold sleep of death. The fear of death can be found in the hearts of all the sentient beings of the universe, and so there is no shortage of mortals of every species present in the galaxy willing to sacrifice their immortal souls in return for the corrupted preservation of their physical bodies for all time. Compared to the other chaos gods, many of Nurgle's followers worship him by no choice of their own. The taint of Nurgle spreads readily among beasts and humanoids alike, and the awful arcane illness known as Nurgle's rot may strike even the strongest person and cause him or her to be outcast as a leper. Despite the nature of his influence, Nurgle takes an interest in the victims of the diseases he unleashes, which he considers to be gifts, jovially caring for them in a manner similar to a loving grandfather, for which reason he is frequently referred to as Grandfather Nurgle by his servants. This also causes some that would have otherwise never been infected to seek out disease and even poison themselves to earn his favor. The deranged worshippers of the Lord of Pestilence say that he concocts diverse contagions to inflict on the material universe for his amusement, and many of the most infectious and horrible diseases are Nurgle's proudest creations. It is their belief that those who die caught in the grip of one of Nurgle's terrible poxes are swept directly to his domain, the land of the Plague Lord. Those that sing the praises of Nurgle loud enough are sometimes spared so that they can spread his blessings further, for the Church of the Fly Lord is always open to all. Nurgle has many supplicants, but there are few with the fortitude to declare themselves as his champions. The few that can survive the great corruptor's manifold blessings exhibit a feverish, morbid energy and a preternatural resistance to physical damage. Those that fashion themselves champions of Nurgle represent a dire threat to densely populated worlds, where close-packed populations are vulnerable to a single contagion. Ships in the void are particularly vulnerable to disease, and many dying crews have beseeched the Lord of Decay for his intercession. Such was the fate of the Death Guard Space Marine Legion when it became marooned in the warp on the long journey to Terra during the Horus Heresy. While they lay becalmed in the Immaterium, a mysterious contagion spread from one to another of the Death Guard's void ships until the entire fleet was infected. Even the reinforced transhuman physiology of the Space Marines could not fight off the dire plague as it bloated the guts, distended the flesh and rotted its victims from the inside. It is said that when even the Legion's Primarch, Mortarion, fell victim to the plague, he cried out to the ruinous powers of chaos in his delirium. His desperation to save himself and his legion called forth Nurgle, and Mortarion became his greatest champion and demon prince. These Chaos Space Marines became known as the Plague Marines, Nurgle's most potent and prized mortal servants. Thus, the Death Guard Legion has enjoyed the favor of Nurgle for the last 10,000 standard years.